So what would you say if I told you there's a scandal involving Samsung that you probably never heard of and nobody ever told you about it? Something I can always understand is people being fans of things, like maybe a franchise, Pokemon. You can also be a fan of a soccer team, a football team, a basketball team, or even an anime show. But something that's a little bit conflicting to me is being a fan of a company just because it's a company. But I also can understand why this used to be the case in the past. Because before the internet, we used to buy things regarding their reputation, like saying, you know what? Sony reflects quality. That's why I buy everything Sony, and I actually like Sony products. And maybe at some point in history, this used to be true because the manufacturing chains used to be different. Everything used to have different standards, and probably most of those products were actually very good. But nowadays, you have the internet where you maybe can check out their reputation. You can also check out user experience. You can check out tech reviewers like myself. You might not trust the big ones, specifically right now that there's been a lot of controversy regarding big YouTubers like maybe Marquez or maybe Linus. I can also understand that. But you do have a huge scenario where you can check the opinion of different people and actually decide whether the product is good for you or not, and also not only purchase it because it's from a certain brand. And where I'm getting with this is I want to tell you a story where Samsung actually turned their back on their most loyal customers and their customers in general in this certain location I will tell you in a few moments. Well, there are two types of market. You have gray market, you have the regular market, and you might have black market. Black market is stolen stuff, probably sketchy things you should not be purchasing. I never will condone black markets. But the gray market is something that's been actually named by companies, and it's not illegal. The issue with the gray market is that most companies cannot control their own stock. For example, if you purchase a phone directly from Samsung, their store, that is not a gray market. That is straight from the manufacturer. If you purchase it on Amazon and it's not sold directly by Samsung at your locality, that is considered gray market. And companies most of the time actually say, if you purchase on the gray market, we will not be responsible for warranties, and we might not even respect warranties whatsoever, which is fair in my opinion because you get probably a good discount from purchasing in the gray market, but it has its risks. As long as us consumers are willing to take that risk and actually those caveats, I think it's okay. It's a win-win. At the end of the day, you're still purchasing a legal product that was actually made from a straight out forward company. This was not a bootleg product, this was not a fake product or a stolen product. But all of a sudden, Samsung decided that in certain locality, they were not selling enough through their main channels, their physical stores, their authorized resellers, and their actual digital stores, because the price was way too high. So most Samsung fans were actually purchasing their products through the gray market. That means Amazon, resellers, but everything completely legal. So Samsung decided out of nowhere that if you were not going to purchase their products through their authorized channels, they were going to block your phone. Yeah, and I'm not talking like you can't make a phone call block. I'm talking about bricking your phone, where you're not even going to be able to access your pictures or even use it like maybe an MP3 player. It turned into an actual brick. And this is one of the most greedy actions I've ever seen. This happened 3 years ago. Yeah, it's been almost 3 years ago. And if you want to know the whole story, I will link the video after this one down below in the description. But do be advised, that original story I covered was in Spanish. And the reason I want to tell you about this story is because I've seen a video that's been out there criticizing certain content creators, why they use embargoes, and if they're actually sold out to companies. And what happens when you go against companies? Well, I can tell you what happened after I spoke out of this, and I actually tried to reach out to content creators in other countries, and almost nobody helped me. But let me continue before we get to that point. Well, Samsung decided this, and they did start bricking people's phones. They started blocking them. They would get a notification. This is not an authorized seller phone. You need to come into a store, and if you come into our store, we will give you 30% discount on the same device, but you have to leave with us your non-authorized device, which for me is mind-blowing. I mean, people actually save up money to buy these phones. Most of them were actually mid to low tier phones because that's the people that were actually more affected by this decision. And Samsung didn't give a crap. They blocked the phones and they were asking people to come in and trade their phones and get a 30% discount, pay again, and get an authorized phone. And their posture about this was what was actually mind-blowing for me, because I contacted them directly and they told me they were doing it because they wanted to benefit the consumer. They said that way they would get the official warranty, that the bands, the cellular bands, were going to be the correct ones for the country. Because when you purchase from the gray market, you do get a phone that maybe was actually destined to be used in Asia, or maybe destined to use in South America, and you might live in North America. How they were managing this was crazy to me. And a lot of people were trying to defend them, saying that they had the right to do this, and at the end of the day, it was their product and they were able to block it if they wanted. No, once you purchase a product, it is your property. You're not doing anything illegal, not breaking any laws. You should not be taken into accountable, because Samsung cannot control their own logistics. What happens with Samsung, some resellers purchase phones, God knows from where, they bring them at a cheaper price, they don't pay the same taxes that Samsung pays, so they're able to purchase them and actually sell them even cheaper, which is maybe something that's not right in the country regulation. But that is not the fault of the consumer. And making the consumer pay for that is what's actually a terrible decision. In my main channel, I blocked Samsung from working with me because I said, if they don't go back on this measure, I won't work with them again. And a lot of people started laughing about me, but not consumers or even viewers. It was actually other content creators. And they always said, you're not going to be able to make a difference. They're not going to go back on this. It's going to happen anyways, and you're only closing the doors on you. So there is a pressure from companies to content creators to make the content they want and actually give out the opinion they want. But with full disclosure, and after 7 years of making this and working as a content creator, I can tell you not every company is like that. So Samsung might have been like that, but not in every country. And now it's important I tell you where this took place, because it's probably in a bigger place and closer than you think. I'm from Mexico, and this happened in Mexico. And they were trying it out as a pilot, because if it would have worked in Mexico, they would have done it in the whole world if they would have been allowed. Obviously, a lot of countries do protect consumers, and they would have never been able to pull this off. But where countries don't have this regulated, they would have done it anyway. And that's probably most South America. But fortunately, they had to go back on the measure. Yes, Samsung was obligated to unblock the phones and reinstate full services to the people that were actually affected. And you know why? Because the videos started going viral. Some of my videos were even spoken on newspapers, were spoken, I believe, in a news channel. But most content creators either didn't want to say absolutely anything or were actually trying to defend Samsung, which to me is absurd. There should not be brand loyalty when a brand is actually looking at us only as a customer. And we should only look at a brand as a producer or actually as a brand. They are not your friends. You are not doing yourself any favor to being loyal to a brand. That is the only thing I wanted to get to with this video. Now, there's a channel called Jeff Tech, which has actually been criticizing some of the biggest tech YouTubers on the channel. And I think some of his criticism is pretty valid. But there are some things that are misinforming or he's probably not aware of. Yes, a lot of companies, when they're going to pump out a new product, they give us an embargo because they want to control the narrative. They want everybody to push out the video probably the same date so they get a better marketing and SEO experience. And most of the time, they will give the products first to people they think might actually like it or talk well about it. They do give out sometimes review guides, but review guides, at least in my situation, are not meant or actually giving to us so we can say or speak about certain things and omit other things from a product. They're just there to tell us what the brand wants us to actually know, which is the best selling point about their products. But as reviewers, our work is to actually work around that, check everything in the product, and actually analyze what the brand is not telling us. To tell you, I don't know, maybe an iPhone overheats and Apple's never going to say that. Maybe a Samsung well, Samsung's go boom. I don't want to say the word here on YouTube like they've done in the past. And obviously your brand is never going to say that. But as tech reviewers, that's our job. We should be looking workarounds from that. If you have a paid partnership, it's a completely different story. And you should always be completely transparent with your audience and tell them it's a paid partnership, which again is not a bad thing as long as it's always disclosed and they're always telling you. Brands do not pay us for reviews. At least that's my case. I don't accept payments for reviews. I do accept payments for sponsored videos. I accept payments for publicity videos, but they're always completely transparent and it always will say paid partnership. It will never say a review because it does not involve my opinion. That's just the way it is, and it's the business from YouTube. But embargoes don't mean they own us and don't mean they're actually paying us. We can't break the embargo, obviously, because it's a legal term, you have to sign it. And yes, we do need early access to the product. But having early access to a product does not mean, in my case, that I owe anything to a company. And yes, I've been blocked by companies, for example, Samsung. They tried to control the narrative when this happened, and I didn't give a damn. I didn't mind not working with them again. I haven't worked with them anymore. I haven't been invited to their events, and I can understand it. No brand is going to want to have people around them who actually talk shit about their company or their brand. But I never actually talk shit about brands. I try to be respectable, and I always tell good and bad things about the products I actually test. And you know what? Most brands are actually okay with it. Some brands may not, and I can tell you a couple of them. Most of them are the big ones. For example, Samsung and Apple don't like criticism. But other brands, like for example, Huawei, always ask me to criticize and even ask me for certain pointers. People from Sonos have always told me, please tell your honest opinion, because they know I'm not disrespectful, but I'm not trying to hide information behind a video or technical terms. I just tell you, I like this, I don't like this. It's as easy as that. Again, go watch Jeff Tech's video, it's pretty good, it has very interesting points, and I do believe there are some mischiefs from the biggest YouTubers. Not all of them are bad, but some of them, yes, probably feel pressured from losing certain clients. Other medium-sized YouTubers or tech reviewers, whatever you want to call us, don't feel that pressured. Because you know what? There are a lot of other brands. My business also has other ways of monetizing. It doesn't depend only on specific brands. And at least that is not my case. And I'm sure there are a lot of tech YouTubers out there that are pretty good, that have probably a medium to big audience and are not sold outs. What you need to know is that Linus, Mr. Who's the Boss, and Marques Brownlee are not the only tech YouTubers out there. If you're new around here, don't forget to subscribe. It always helps us out quite a bit. Also, maybe check out another video over here, which I think you might like. And I'll see you, whoa, I'm tripping, in the next one.